Gary asks a question. Let's listen to Gary.
Mr. Morris, I've asked for the last several weekends and I haven't got any reply from you. I was wondering how much more has to go wrong or what needs to be done for Jerome Powell to kick in and rescue us all.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for the question. So Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve Chair, you want him to step in and issue some sort of a Fed Now digital currency to the American people or a stimulus check to the American people. Look, the Federal Reserve has almost unlimited power at this point and is sort of operating almost independently of it's operating independently of the federal government. It's not elected, right? Central bank. They've done a bunch of things recently to garner even more power. And they've done things that are not constitutionally allowed, and they've gone ahead with them anyway. Buying up corporate junk bonds again, et cetera. These are things that they're not allowed to do, and they're doing them anyway to help Wall Street. So any rational person would think, well, if they can do that for Wall Street, couldn't they do it for us? Couldn't the Federal Reserve step in and issue us some sort of a digital currency, some sort of a check, some sort of a stimulus, $1,200 continuous for the rest of the year? We've heard Jerome Powell talking about that over the past couple of months, that we need continued stimulus, regular. He even used the word regular stimulus for the American people. We didn't get it. Could they step in? You have to ask yourself, what is the incentive? When I look at that, I ask the question, what's the incentive for the Federal Reserve to step in? Again, it all comes back to money. Well, for them, the incentive would be keeping Wall Street happy, keeping the banks lending, and keeping GDP high and inflation low. Okay. Given that, we just saw record GDP in the past 24 hours in the third quarter, 33%. Now looking at that number, you can clearly think that the Federal Reserve is not going to touch a stimulus for the American people. Sadly, because those numbers are so good. But Jerome Powell has had vision, or he's seen beyond these numbers. And other members of the Federal Reserve have also seen beyond these sort of phony numbers. And they're looking at long-term unemployment, permanent job loss. I've heard Powell say it time and time again. Permanent job loss would be a permanent drag on our economy. Well, guess what? They are continuing to have job loss. 800,000 last week. Businesses closing at a record pace. So we can all be mystified by these numbers. We could all look at Google's third quarter earnings yesterday and say, wow, they did well. Facebook, record profit. That's amazing. Good for you. Amazon, way to go. And yet it's so disconnected from you and me. It's so disconnected from the normal American who's feeling and experiencing this hardship and pain right now. So to answer your question, Gary, I don't know. I don't know at what point it would become so bad. Mass unemployment, mass evictions. I mean, maybe we're going to have to wait until the evictions really start happening, until there's an absolute wave of foreclosures. In fact, that's probably when it'll happen. When we see the wave of foreclosures start to hit, perhaps then is when the Federal Reserve may have an emergency meeting with the White House. We've seen it before, and we've got to do something. You want us to step in here? Because we're going to have to. They already have the infrastructure. Make no mistake about it. The Federal Reserve already has the tokenized, the digital currency mechanisms now under their Fed Now digital currency. It's there. They've been having meetings about it over the past 2 years. The infrastructure is there for them to take action on this, where they could issue a digital bank account to all Americans and every month put $2,000 in that account, or issue bonds that they would buy back if we reached a certain level of unemployment. They can do this. It's there already. It's just, to me, the answer is, to answer your question, Gary, is how painful does it have to be for Wall Street for this to actually happen? Or the sort of deep state military industrial complex? Like, how difficult or how painful does it have to get for Boeing or Northrop Grumman or Lockheed or any of the big companies that get billions of dollars in federal defense contracts? How difficult or painful does it have to get for those guys before the Federal Reserve steps in and does something for the American people? That, I think, is the question. Because if you believe these Washington politicians and the central bank is sitting around feeling badly for you, you got another thing coming.